Not realizing that there's more things to do than just visit the national parks. That is one of the mistakes that people make when they visit Moab, Utah for the first time. My name is Matt and my channel is We're in the Rockies. My wife and I, we give you tips to help you enjoy your trips to the West. In this video, we're going to talk about mistakes that first timers make when they visit Moab, Utah. So the first thing is not realizing that there is much more to do in and around Moab, Utah than to just visit the national parks. Don't get me wrong, we love the national parks. There are two of them in the area, Canyonlands National Park and Arches National Park, that we have done other videos on as well that you can check out. The whole area is red rock country. In fact, John Wayne said it was where God put the West. It is just a cool area, so there's a lot more to do than just the national parks. Okay, the second mistake that people make is not booking a Jeep tour. So this is one of the main things to do in Moab, is to go on a Jeep tour. There's a lot of red rock there, and you will be amazed at some of the drives that these Jeeps can go on. They go up hills, they go through cracks, they kind of straddle walls and things like that, and it is quite an adventure to go on a Jeep tour in Moab. Next mistake people make is not looking for petroglyphs. So there are a lot of Indian petroglyphs all over the area. Now there's petroglyphs and pictographs, and I think petroglyphs are where they carve it into the rock, and pictographs are where they draw it onto the rock. There were Native Americans that lived in the area around 1,300 years ago or something like that. And so there are quite a few different places where you can see these amazing petroglyphs and pictographs. They don't publicize it a ton because they also have had a problem in recent years, especially where people are vandalizing these sites. It's mind-blowing that people are so rude and inconsiderate to vandalize these sites that are over 1,000 years old. If you ever see somebody doing that, make sure to speak up. Our guide will get you to these places to see the petroglyphs. You can check that out on our website at we'reintherockies.com. Okay, the next mistake that people make is getting a hotel that's too close to Main Street. Moab is a little tiny town, but it's a main thoroughfare for eastern Utah. And so there's a lot of cars that are traveling up and down through Moab, right through the middle of town, truckers, things like that. So when you're looking for a room in Moab, try to get a hotel that's not right on Main Street. And if you do get a hotel that's on Main Street, make sure to request a room that is not next to the main road. I literally, the last time I was there, stayed probably about 10 or 15 feet away from where truckers were just zipping by at night. The hotel gave me earplugs, which was nice and all that, but just try to avoid that if you can. The next mistake people make is not hiking to Delicate Arch. So Delicate Arch is the most famous arch in Arches National Park. And they have a viewpoint that you can pretty much just drive to with a short little walk, and you can see the arch from the viewpoint. It's far away and it really doesn't do it justice at all. So if you want to see Delicate Arch, make sure to do the hike. You do need to know though that the parking lot for the hike does fill up, and it fills up pretty early and it stays full all day long. The hike is also pretty hot, so if you're there in the summer, it's boiling hot, and you're hiking across slick rock with no shade at all. It's about 3 miles, which isn't too bad, but it is a pretty hot hike, but totally worth it to see Delicate Arch, which is definitely the coolest arch in the park. Okay, the next mistake that people make is not getting a ticket for Arches National Park. So Arches is one of these national parks that's kind of getting overwhelmed by visitors in recent years. It was never really set up to handle 1.5 million to 2 million visitors per year. The parking lots are kind of small. So last year, a lot of people would enter the park and the park would literally just be full. There was no way anybody could get any parking inside the park. And so they would shut it down at like 7:30 in the morning. So this year they have implemented a reservation system. You have to go onto their website and get a ticket. It's actually recreation.gov, and you have to get a ticket in advance to enter Arches, and it'll give you a window. It'll give you a 1 hour window of time in which to enter the park. Just make sure you do that before you visit. Now, if you don't get your ticket in advance, you can try to get it the day before, and if you don't get that, you can enter in the evening. So I think the ticketing thing stops at like 5 o'clock p.m. Sorry, I don't have the exact details on hand right at this very moment, but just go to recreation.gov and search for Arches and you'll find the tickets and the rules and all that. But I believe you can enter in the evening without a ticket. The next mistake people make is ignoring Canyonlands National Park. So Canyonlands has 2 different areas to the park that are accessible from Moab. The first one is the northern section called the Island in the Sky. That's the most visited, and that's where you go to the rim and you look down over these just vast canyonlands. It is amazing. It is really kind of like the Grand Canyon, only actually bigger in some ways than the Grand Canyon. And that's the northern section. You can also go down to the southern section, which is called the Needles, which is often overlooked, but super cool as well. So my last trip there, I spent a whole week in Moab. I did 2 days in Arches. I did a day at the Island of the Sky and a day at the Needles section in Canyonlands, and then I filled in the rest with amazing things around Moab. This is truly an amazing way to spend a week by covering everything there is to do in and around Moab. Okay, the next mistake people make is visiting Dead Horse Point State Park. So Dead Horse Point actually sits in between Canyonlands and Arches, almost kind of an extension of Canyonlands really is the best way to think about it. Dead Horse Point is really cool. It is a lot like Canyonlands though. You're looking down off a cliff and there is kind of a horseshoe formation that you can look at. It's not that Dead Horse Point isn't worth it, it's just that you're gonna pay $20 to enter the park and you go out there for a photo op basically, and that's about all there is to it, and it's pretty much the same photo op that you get from Canyonlands National Park. It's great. It's a wonderful state park. It's just that you're already getting the same thing at Canyonlands. That's the only thing there. So you are paying 20 bucks for a picture basically. Okay, the next mistake people make is not renting an SUV if you are getting a rental car. So if you are flying into somewhere like Denver or Las Vegas and you're doing kind of a Mighty 5 trip and you're going to be hitting Moab along the way, consider getting an SUV for your rental car because there are a lot of dirt roads that you can visit that will enhance your trip. So Canyonlands has a really famous road called Schaefer Road, and it's got these switchbacks and you're going down. It's actually where you're going from the top level of the canyon down to the bottom level of the canyon. Arches has a couple of dirt roads. If you're going to be hitting other parks like Capitol Reef, they've got quite a few dirt roads that you'll actually want to drive on to make more out of your trip if possible. So consider getting an SUV for your rental car. The next mistake that people make is not watching some movies before you go. You may not realize, but Moab was like a little Hollywood for many years where many Western movies were filmed, including many with John Wayne. Behind me is called the Fisher Towers. These are quite iconic in the movies. A lot of Western movies have been filmed with the Fisher Towers in the background. A lot of times in the movies, the characters would supposedly travel hundreds of miles, but then you'd still see the towers in the background in the new scene. Tons and tons of movies were shot right around here in Moab and in the surrounding vicinity by John Ford, director, and John Wayne in a lot of the movies. In fact, they asked John Wayne why he shot so many movies in Moab, and he said, because that's where God put the West. And then the famous movie Thelma and Louise. Last scene in Thelma and Louise, they drive off the ledge of the Grand Canyon, and that actually happened at Dead Horse Point State Park that I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of movie making history. In fact, there is a little museum for this very thing here, a Hollywood movie museum at Red Cliffs Lodge near Moab that I highly recommend you visiting if you're at all into movies or kind of learning the history of the area. Just check it out and watch some movies before you go. Really pretty cool stuff. The next mistake people make is not packing picnic lunches. So when you visit Arches and you visit Canyonlands, there are no restaurants in those parks. To get the most out of your trip to those parks, you're gonna wanna pack a picnic lunch with you as you go. The other thing is, there's a lot of really beautiful scenic drives around the area, including, as I mentioned, the Needles Park area at Canyonlands. And so you're kind of out far away from anything, from civilization at times. And so you should always just have a picnic lunch with you, have some food on hand. Okay, the next mistake that people make is walking on the arches. I cannot believe, again, it's like the petroglyphs and ruining those things. I can't believe that people walk on the arches. Last time I was there, I was at Mesa Arch, which is actually in Canyonlands, not Arches. And they have this sign there, don't walk on the arch, and yet I saw a couple of walking across there. I told them to get down, actually told them multiple times to get down. They ignored me, they went out there. I guess it's their own peril, but don't walk on the arches. We shouldn't have to say this, but don't walk on the arches at Arches National Park unless it's part of the trail that you can go on. Okay, the final mistake that people make is not being prepared for their trips. So we have a whole playlist of things to do in and around Moab with a lot of tips. So check that playlist out. I'm going to link it here on this video, and then also our website, we'reintherockies.com. Go there. We have a step-by-step travel guide with an itinerary and an audio guide that I make to tell you all about the area as you travel around there. We will give you a great game plan. So check that out. Check out our playlist. Have a lot of resources for you there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, go west, young traveler.